Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. So in the Master Gardening class last week, we learned herbaceous landscape plants. So let's get right into it. Introduction, learning objectives, discuss how to grow herbaceous plants, state the basic requirements of herbaceous plants, demonstrate how to design gardens with herbaceous plants, describe the growing cycles of herbaceous plants, and describe aspects of specialty gardening. Plant classifications. So there's herbaceous and woody. Herbaceous, they're fleshy, soft, and succulent. Stem plants may be classified as annuals, perennials, or biennials. And now we also have woody perennials, largely trees and shrubs, may be deciduous, lose their foliage, or evergreen, hold on to their foliage and retain their stems, which resume growth with that start of each season. Life cycles, annuals and perennials, we pretty much know. Annuals, they complete their life cycle in a single season of growth, provide color and seasonal interest. Most of the plants we consider annuals, such as coleus, petunias, snapdragons, and bed plant vinca, are capable of living for years in a frost-free environment. Perennials, they live for several years, die back to the ground in fall, and return the following spring. Some may be tender or half-hardy. Perennials usually have short bloom periods and will flower seasonally after establishment. And then there's biennials, bi meaning two. Biennials refers to the plant's need for two growing seasons to complete its life cycle. When planted from seed, they grow foliage the first year but will not flower. Biennials produce only foliage that first year, then flower, fruit, and die in the second year. Like foxglove, sweet william, money plant, dame's rocket, even primrose, hollyhocks, stuff like that. Grasses. Grasses. Annual and perennial ornamental grasses often play aesthetic roles in traditional flower beds and can be used in more functional design applications. Like shrubs, they may be a component of a foundation planting or a screen planting. Planting in a mass, they serve as ground covers. Grass selections available at better nurseries have expanded exponentially in the last few years as their popularity has grown. If you've watched my last video, I just planted some Niagara Falls, I believe. Or no, Prairie Winds. And then I also have one, two, three, four miscanthus back there. And I have some switchgrass back there too. So I love grasses. Ground covers, herbaceous ground covers are usually perennials that keep their foliage throughout the winter, though deciduous perennials may also be used in this role. Ground covers may provide solutions for design or site challenge. For example, they can be quite useful in an area that would be awkward or too steep to mow, or in places where turf grass will not succeed. They often used as a base in a shrub beds or under trees, but they may also be an effective part of a flower bed design. The ground cover most people think of first is the ubiquitous monkey grass, but there are many plants that can serve this function. Consider using ground covers for broad brush strokes of color rather than outlines at the edge of your beds. They can be used as a part of the composition, serving as an element for contrast or complement. Around my pond, I have some moss. I think of Irish moss or Scottish moss. And then I also have creeping thyme, which creeping thyme blooms kind of like a fuchsia, purpley, um, pink color. It's really pretty. And then we have tropicals. You know, we love tropicals. I have elephant ears and canna lilies, the echeverias. Tropical plants were once regulated to the patio or porch for summer interest or used as houseplants. These are certainly still viable functions, but tropicals are gaining much wider use in summer flower beds and mixed containers. They add a lushness and bold effect that many gardeners find exciting and difficult to replace with other plants. They may be wintered over in the home, greenhouse, enclosed garage, crawl space, or other protective structure. However, gardeners most often consider them a part of the expenditure for color, and they purchase new tropical plants each spring. Choosing plants appropriate to region. Plants should be selected that are suitable for wherever you're from in general and for gardener's region specifically. Some may not be tolerant of summer heat, or they may be tender perennials that will not constantly survive winters. It's changed a little bit in Tennessee, where I am. We're 7B, and from like all the way down to Memphis, all the way to the Tri Cities, Bristol area. I think it's like 5 to 8 range in Tennessee. It's just very important to know your USDA zone wherever you are. Site selection. In choosing sites for plants, keep in mind the variations in light categories and the time of day during which plants will receive direct sunlight. Finding the environment to meet the needs of your plants can sometimes be a learning experience. Identify problem areas such as drainage issues, hard pans, etc. Locate utility lines both above and below. Coming to understand the growing site and the plant material can sometimes involve trial and error. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of this USDA zone, you can look online. If you see a plant that you like, the tag will provide a lot of information like the light requirements, if it's part shade, full sun, things like that, the USDA zone, how much water it needs, and stuff like that. Site selection, like I was just talking about, light. Full sun is at least 6 full hours of direct sunlight. Partial sun, partial shade. These two terms are often used interchangeably to mean 3 to 6 hours of sun each day, preferably in the morning and early afternoon. Dappled sun. Dappled sunlight is similar to partial shade. It is the sun that makes its way through the branches of deciduous trees. Full shade, less than 3 hours of direct sunlight each day with filtered sunlight during the rest of the day. Full shade does not mean no sun. There aren't many plants except mushrooms that can survive in the dark. Site selection light. The light exposure the site receives will dictate the plants that can be used. Most annuals and perennials require full sun to realize their flowering potential. A variety of annuals, biennials, and perennials do well in part shade or light shade. However, the plant palette is limited for plants that will thrive in the shade. Sun-loving plants need at least 6 hours of sun each day to realize their full potential. If these plants receive less light, the results will be poor: flowering, stretched, leggy growth, and weak stems. Shade-loving plants, when placed out in full sun, will suffer from heat, scorched leaves, poor color, lack of vigor, etc. Site selection, soil and bed preparation. Soil is the most important element to a successful garden or landscape. A soil that is well drained and high in organic matter is ideal and will allow plants to reach their full potential, provided other growing conditions are favorable. Site selection, soil and bed preparation. Organic matter in the soil provides nutrients, moisture retention, and good air and water movement to promote root health and plant productivity. Organic matter content can be increased by adding compost or manures and by the use of mulches. Horticulturists often recommend the addition of organic material before planting to enhance the establishment of young plants. That's also called like amending the soil. However, many plants can thrive or even prefer soils low in organic matter, such as herbs and a number of our roadside natives. Site selection, soil, and bed preparation. So this is what we need to do. Before planting, remove or kill any unnecessary vegetation from the site. Vegetation can be removed manually with a shovel, spade, or a power sod stripper. I like to use my Hori Hori. Vegetation can be killed by covering the area with a material that shades out the light, or chemicals can be used. At this point, a soil test should be conducted. Till the area to about an inch depth and remove any rocks or any other debris. Add 2 to 3 inches of organic matter compost to improve the overall soil structure. The best amendments for clay soils are pine bark humus, composted leaf mold, manure, grass clippings, etc. And here is a picture of sod, some grass. I think I'm on strips. Site selection, soil and bed preparation, percolation testing. Dig a hole approximately 12 inches in diameter and add to the depth of the area amended. Fill the hole with water, let drain, and repeat the process one more time. If the water does not drain in less than an hour, the drainage needs improvement. Site selection, spacing. Proper spacing is important because if they are too close, poor circulation can occur and this can lead to disease problems. Plants need air movement over their leaves to dry off excess dew, water, and humidity. In contrast, if plants are spaced too far apart, the garden will look sparse and weeds will take advantage of the vacancies. And that's kind of like what you want to do, kind of like alter um, your planting, your rows to make it a little bit more natural. Design hints, tips, and examples. Ground covers provide broad brushstrokes of background color. They should not be used to outline a bed, but rather thought of as part of the composition, an element of contrast or complement. To provide a vertical accent background, use tall plants such as Joe Pieweed, purple coneflower, foxglove, dill, ornamental grasses, tall phlox, allium, etc. For cascading or weeping form, consider using perennial verbena, ornamental sweet potato vines, vinca vine. For a round or shrubby form, consider using artemisia, rosemary, catnip, lepida, sage, perennial salvias. Don't be afraid to toy with using edible herbs within the landscape. Here's an example of some like coneflower, some ground cover. Planting times. So in Tennessee, the average last frost date is April 15th. I always wait until around Mother's Day, which is in May. Um, and then cold hardy annuals plant September and October. When planted, like my violas, what are the other one? Pansies, stuff like the ornamental cabbage. That's good to plant right now. When planted early in spring, they are short-lived due to heat stress. Warm season annuals plant mid-April through June. The biennials and perennials, the ideal time for planting is in fall after the hot days of summer have passed. Planting and transplanting. Containerized perennials can be planted any time of year provided that enough water is available. Perennials should be divided and transplanted during spring or fall. The plants need to become established before experiencing harsh winter temperatures or hot summer temperatures. Buying plants. After selecting, preparing, and designing the garden or landscape site, it is time to visit a reputable nursery or garden center to look for plants that are desirable and compatible with the conditions in the garden. The secret to successful gardening is choosing plants that grow in harmony with each other and with the garden landscape conditions. The selection process. Select plants that are uniform and balanced to the size of the container. Weak, elongated, or floppy stems are a sign that the plant has been grown too tightly packed with other plants or has been in the container too long. Resist the temptation to choose the plants with most flowers. One that has yet to bloom or has many buds that have not yet opened will provide more weeks of color. If it is a plant that continues flowering throughout the summer, it can be deadheaded while it adjusts to the new site so that the energy can go to the root foliage growth rather than to the blossoms. Selection process. Select plants with healthy foliage and good color. Look for insect damage or areas discolored, dark or rust colored spots as they may be signs of disease. Inspect the plants for insects. They may be hiding on the underside of the leaves as well as on the stems and leaf petioles. Aphids, spider mites, mealybugs, whiteflies, and scale are common insects found on plants. To help detect plant pests, tap or shake the plant lightly and note whether any of the pests fall off. And then continued, inspect the root system to make sure roots are healthy by gently removing the plant from the container. Press on all sides of the container to loosen the roots so the plant slides out easily. Then look to see if the roots fill the container without being root bound. Root bound plants have an overabundance of roots circling the pot, which will hinder establishment when transplanted. Brown or discolored roots may be diseased or rotted. Healthy roots are whitish. Planting. Cloudy or overcast days are best for planting. Hot and windy days should be avoided. Before starting, the plants in the bed need to be moist, but not soggy. Walking on or digging in a soggy bed can compact the soil and ruin its structure by creating large, unbreakable clumps. Plants should be planted at the same level they were growing in the containers. If the roots are tightly bound around the soil in the container, the root ball needs to be broken. After all the plants are planted in the ground, the plants need to be thoroughly watered. Soil and water management. One of the key aspects in stewarding any landscape is the intentional management of soil quality. The ability of soil to infiltrate, move, and hold water is vitally important to plant survival and productivity as well as water quality. Many management steps can be taken to improve soil relations. Site preparation involves addressing compaction and drainage issues through incorporation of organic matter and other techniques. After planting, maintaining soil cover with mulches is one of the most important soil and water steward tactics. Organic mulches are the most useful because in addition to reducing erosion and improving water infiltration, they are also slowly breaking down to add organic matter to the soil. And continued, over time, mulches encourage the multiplication of soil organisms by providing energy sources as well as more even temperature and moisture in their habitat. Increased organic matter further enhances water holding capacity and it holds and supplies nutrients for plants, which can be thought of as a beneficial snowball effect. Over time, these practices can reduce the need for both irrigation and fertilization in planting beds while preventing runoff to nearby waterways and storm drains. One final note about water, soil, and mulching. Some gardeners lay a weed barrier in the form of plastic or cloth under the mulch in their flower beds to prevent weed growth. This practice is discouraged for several reasons. First, plastic especially can reduce or prevent water from soaking into flower beds, which can lead to plant stress or death and increased runoff. Second, plants are further increased by a reduction of oxygen in the root zone. Third, once the mulch decomposes, weeds rarely grow in and on top of the weed barrier, defeating the purpose. Finally, weed barriers can reduce the ability of soil organisms like earthworms to create tunnels and move organic matter down in the soil profile and improve soil quality. They also complicate planting and dividing as well as plant movement and landscape beds. So, soil and water management. Take home message. Plants will not survive without water. Plants need about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week. This may be very dependent upon the site, type of plant, type of soil, or other factors. Thoroughly soak plants. Do not give them a sprinkle baptism. The ideal time to water is early in the morning. Fertilizers. Fertilizers can boost growth and flowering, but too much nitrogen can result in more vegetative growth than reproductive growth, blooms, and many annuals and perennials. Choose a bloom starter formulation that has more phosphorus and potassium, such as 5-12-12. Water-soluble and slow release are the two most common used in landscape and or garden settings. Water-soluble fertilizers are readily available but leach out quickly. Slow-release fertilizers like pellet form or coated are excellent for flower beds. Regular applications of balanced fertilizers like NPK is usually necessary. However, look at the plant vigor and soil test results to determine if you really need a fertilizer. Pest management. Choosing species and cultivars that are well suited to the environment, as well as ones that possess genetic resistance against some of the most common pests and diseases, is essential. Proper moisture and fertility management further sustains their good health. Scouting and determining the best method of pest control is also essential. The gardener's own threshold for pest damage will determine when control is needed. Some actions could be required for diseases and pests that can cause long-term damage to the plants, but it is important to know which pests lead only to cosmetic damage. In these instances, a little extra patience can reduce the need for control actions and potentially maintain the ecological balance of the pest and beneficial insects in the landscape. So it is wise not to dash into the garden with insecticide spray too quickly. Mulch. A well-mulched garden prevents many weeds from germinating and makes it easier for those that do not invade to be removed. Weeding on a regular basis helps keeps weeds under control. Weeds can be pulled by hand or removed with the aid of a hoe or other garden implement, but make sure to get the entire root system. There are pre-emergent herbicides available that control many common germinated weeds, but be aware that pre-emergent herbicides will also prevent reseeding from desirable annuals or biennials. Read the follow label instructions for application rates and species around which the herbicides can be used. Weed control tips. Chemical weed control. Herbicides may be necessary to control persistent weed problems like nutsedge or Bermuda grass. Herbicides for nutsedge control Basagrin and manage. Herbicides for Bermuda grass can control things like grass, skitter, post, grass begone, ornamentic, over the top. And then seed starting. Use a soilless mix like Pro Mix and plant the seeds without pre-treatment in small cell trays, which are placed on a heat mat without lights. As they grow, move them to deep cell trays and they stay under lights. After the seeds have germinated, they can then be transplanted into cell packs, peat pots, or other containers, like 2-inch. Start seeds indoors. Water. Water is necessary for germination. Water stress will severely impact growth, size, and establishment of plants. Drought stress is a common reason for poor germination. However, excess water promotes the occurrence of dampening off. Continued must provide appropriate growing environment. The temperature needs to be about 60 degrees to 80 degrees, average of 75. Heat mats placed below flats will help maintain optimal temperatures during germination. They need light. You can always think of Roy J. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Light. Red and blue have the most impact on plant growth. Green is least effective. It's the reflection of green light, which gives the green color to plants. Blue equals vegetative growth, and red, when combined with blue, encourages flowering. Starting seeds indoors, light continued. Fluorescent lamps are most common used in home environment to provide light to plants. Fluorescent growth lamps have a mixture of red and blue colors. Incandescent lamps are high in red and red-orange, but generally produce too much heat for use And supplementing plant growth. Once germination occurs, light levels must be high enough to prevent stretching. And then humidity. Like I did this last year. It was so much fun. I'm going to do it again this coming year in the spring. But my cells came with humidity domes. High humidity is not necessary for germination. However, it does reduce the rate of evaporation, thus reducing the potential for water stress. Plastic coverings help maintain moist conditions during germination. Some greenhouses use plastic tents with heat mats and lamps for small germination chambers. And then saving seeds. What do you do with extra seeds? Place seeds inside of canning jars, Ziploc bag, or other sealed container along with a packet of desiccant. Then place container in the refrigerator or freezer. That helps prevent or stop germination. And then bulbs and bulb-like plants. There are several types of storage organs. Bulbs, a large modified bud with a vertical stem and leaves crowded into almost spherical body, like tulips, daffodils, lilies, narcissus, amaryllis. Corms, a solid vertical swollen stem. New corms develop annually from lateral buds like gladiolas, crocus, and autumn crocus. Rhizome, a modified horizontal stem in the soil or on the soil surface. Calla lilies, cannas, bearded iris, water lilies. Tuberous roots of plants such as dahlia or caladium just below the soil surface and have part of an old stem at once in dahlias, begonias, caladiums, and anemones. So it is really exciting, y'all. I have all of these, so I'm probably going to dedicate a video coming up pretty soon to bulbs, corms, rhizomes, tubers. I have everything. I have caladiums that I'm going to dig up. I have gladiola corms. I have tulips. I'm going to a bunch of tulips and narcissus this year. And tubers and rhizomes from my canna lilies. I have a water lily. So we'll learn a lot about all that stuff. So that will be an exciting video. So be on the lookout for that. Flowering bulbs. Bulbs prefer a well-drained soil and full sun, although bulbs of woodland origin prefer partial shade. Improve texture of heavy, wet soil by digging in organic matter. Supplement poor soils with 1:2:1 ratio fertilizer. After flowering, allow foliage to die back naturally. Do not knot or tie leaves together, as this reduces their ability to photosynthesize and store food in bulbs for next year's growth. Bulb notes. So dig, dry, and store tender bulbs such as gladiolas, dahlias, and tuberous begonias in November. What is tender bulb? The term tender bulb refers plants which have fleshy storage structures, bulbs, corms, tubers, and roots, which are killed by cold winters if not brought indoors. So we need to dig carefully. For all structures such as dahlias, cannas, and other materials, it is important to loosen the roots gently with a fork or spade, digging several inches back from the base of the plant so that the roots are not cut off unnecessarily. Cleaning. Some plants are best washed gently with a hose, like dahlias. Gladiolus corms are best left unwashed and allowed to dry. After drying, the soil may be gently removed. Continued curing. For most species listed, the curing period should be relatively short, like dahlias, cannas, callas, and caladium. Drying and curing temperatures for such materials should be 60 to 70 degrees in a well-ventilated area. Pest management. Before storing corms, inspect for insects and diseases. Dust with an insecticide, fungicide mixture labeled for the specific plant. Bulb notes. Storing. It is important to remember to label stored plant material carefully. In this case of gladiolas and similar material, this is easily handled by placing the corm in a small paper bag, which has been properly labeled. Larger materials like dahlia or canna can be handled in several ways. spring flowering bulbs, tulips, daffodils, hyacinth, crocus, and bulbous irises. And there are a list of bulbs and the planting depths. It's really cool. It's usually 2 to 3 the size, 2 to 3 times the diameter is the, like, if it's 2 to 3 inches, it's 4 to 6 inches deep. And here's another thing. I like to, I guess it's called succession plant, spring blooming bulbs. So, got some like snowdrops and other pretty flowers and like alliums. They're kind of like the last, hyacinth. Anyway, you can like plant these, and when those die off, those will come up, those will come up, those will come up. So, early spring, mid spring, and late spring. Here we have long-time interest. Summer and fall flowering bulbs are gladiola, lily, dahlias, tuberous begonias, and calla lilies. And then here is some more spring planting guides for early planting for beautiful summer flowers. So this goes into early summer, midsummer, all summer, into autumn. And then here are some common problems and stresses. Even with the best of care, problems can arise in plants. Conditions such as stress, snails and slugs, insects, diseases, and household pests can cause trouble from time to time. Common stresses: too much or too little light, too much or too little water, overcrowding, poor nutrition, poor soil. Stress on plants can be decreased by properly preparing the soil, purchasing healthy plants, correctly spacing the plants, providing adequate water, and providing sufficient water. Managing plants in the landscape. It comes down to selecting appropriate plants and providing them with what they need to grow and flourish. Landscape to prevent pollution, conserve natural resources, maximize ecological function, and it looks attractive. Garden maintenance. Garden maintenance is necessary to keep gardens looking nice and plants healthy and productive throughout the growing season. Most plants benefit from cutting back, pinching, deadheading, dividing, as well as weeding and edging. Continue cutting back. Many perennials can be cut back after blooming. Many grasses should be cut back in early spring to encourage growth of new healthy foliage. Pinching, removing the growing point back to 1/2 to 1 inch above a leaf stimulates side shoots to grow. Deadheading, throughout the growing season, remove faded or withering blooms from the plant. Weeding is necessary in all gardens. Not only are weeds unsightly, but they also compete with desirable plants for light, water, and nutrients. A well-mulched garden will prevent many weeds from germinating and will make it easier for those that do invade to be removed. Weeds should be pulled by hand or removed with the aid of a garden tool such as a spade or garden fork. In addition, pre-emergent herbicides can be used to prevent seed germination of most of the common weeds found in flower beds. Edging defines the shape of the garden. When used to separate a garden from the lawn, it should always extend at least 4 inches deep. This will stop grass roots from advancing into the garden. Then bricks, flagstones, gravel path, mason stones, and other edging options is low-growing plants that provide interest, foliage, texture, and color. And there's some examples of edging: rocks, container gardening. Patio, decks, entrances, courtyards, and other small areas can be landscaped with the use of container gardening. Proper selection of plants, material, and the container is important to ensure a functional and healthy container garden. Containers can be made of any vessel that can hold soil and water, but there does not need to be drainage for excess water. Irrigation is a critical component of container gardening. The flexibility and unlimited ideas of container size, dimension, and choice of plant material can provide much enjoyment in the garden. There's a beautiful container. We always like to say there's a spiller, filler, and thriller. Designing a container garden. Annuals, perennials, and woody plants can be mixed in a container. When one plant becomes less interesting, it should be replaced with another. Recycling the surviving plants and adding back fresh media when repeating new additions will keep the container healthy and attractive. Designing a container garden. Media. Soilless mixes Soilless mixes are best suited for containers because of their light, weight, and clean components. Soilless mixes usually include a combination of peat moss, perlite, vermiculite, or sand. Fertilizers and wetting agents are usually added to help these materials retain moisture and adequate nutrition. Once the wetting agent dries out, the mix is difficult to re-wet. However, once the plants are established, fertilizers can be added. Placement of containers should be placed in accordance with plant needs. And there's kind of what the container would look like. Soilless mix, garden soil mix, peat, perlite, vermiculite, and there's like the inside of the pot. And that brought us to the end of the class. So that was a lot of information, but what do I want you to do with this? I want you to feel encouraged. Don't be so overwhelmed with all the information. I hope you made it to the end. This was a lot of good information, viable. If you only take 10% of it, use that out in the garden. I want to encourage you to go out in the garden, and thank you again for joining me today. I hope you're still enjoying the Master Gardener series, and I'm just loving, we're getting into fall. It's getting down to like the low 30s now. I know winter is around the corner, so it is time to put your bulbs in the ground and start to clean up in the garden. And this is time to kind of reflect, look back in the spring, summer. What would you do different? We probably learned a lot this season in the garden, and but I will catch you on the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye, y'all.